And so we're super thankful to All Raise, which, you know, has that mission of accelerating the trajectory of an involvement of female funders and founders that can keep us all connected in a remote environment. So thank you all for joining for probably, you know, the 10th, between 10th and 20th Zoom of the day. We hope to keep this interactive. So please feel free to drop questions into the chat as we go through. We have an amazing group of women joining us on this panel to discuss all things related to being an advisor, a mentor, and a board member to companies, both from that advisor board member perspective and also from the operating perspective. We're actually super lucky that we have perspectives of operators turned advisors, and we have current entrepreneurs that are building out their, you know, advisory ecosystem as well. We're not going to claim that there's a direct correlation between the success of a company and the strength of the advisor and board participation in that business, but there certainly is a ton of benefit of curating, you know, the advisors and mentors and board members for an entrepreneur to really scale and, you know, hopefully reach the success that is intended by, you know, at the outset of starting the company. So we're excited to learn from this amazing group. And so we're just going to kick off with quick introductions. You know, I'm hopeful that everyone saw the amazing bios of our panelists. And so we're going to actually cater the intros to, you know, how it's most relevant to this topic of mentorship and advisory work. So maybe we'll kick it off with Danielle. You're first in my list of squares.
Hi guys, I am the entrepreneur on the panel, the founder on the panel. My name is Danielle Johnson, and I'm the CEO and founder of Spark FM Online, online digital radio station located in Boston. We serve the urban and Caribbean markets, and we are a cost-effective alternative to mainstream media.
Excellent. And Kirk?
Kirk Arnold, I'm so thrilled to be here with this. This is one of many Zooms today, but this will definitely be the highlight. And I am a full-time advisory after being an operator for 30 plus years. As Holly said, I'm the operator transition to advisor. And I run the gamut. I teach, which is the ultimate mentor and advisory experience at MIT. I work with Holly as an ex-IRGC, and then Holly and I are on the board of a growth company that's going through a ton of exciting growth and change. So I get an opportunity to work closely with that team in a very different way as a private board member. And then I'm on the board of several public companies. I'm actually on the board of 3 operating companies that are public, and I am on the board of a SPAC, which is very cool. If you want to explore that, I'll tell you a little bit about my experience there. So do a ton of work with largely young women entrepreneurs. I really like spending time with the women, particularly. I sort of get an opportunity to see a bunch of amazing women coming out of MIT and through lots of different networks. So this is my dream date here with all of you. So thrilled to be here.
Terrific. Thanks, Kirk. And Carol.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carol Meyers, and like Kirk, I'm also an operator turned board member, advisor, consultant. So after 30 years as a VP of sales and a chief marketing officer, I'm now a venture partner at Glasswing. And I also do a lot of board work. I'm on the board of a company called ZipWhip and one public company board. And then most recently left another startup called Emarsis that was acquired by SAP, and then was on the board of Mineral Tree, which is another local Boston company, for about 5 years. And then I do advisory work with tons of companies, names you might know locally. WordStream, I worked with them for over 4 years. Duo Security, which was ultimately acquired by Cisco, and then just a whole bunch of them. So I love what I do, and I'm really excited to meet people here today and learn all about what everyone else is doing too.
Excellent. Last but certainly not least, Emily.
No, definitely least, but happy to be last. I'm a recovering CEO. I was 3 different CEO gigs, and about 6 years ago, I moved into what I learned from Sarah Fay. It was called a portfolio life. I have a wonderful portfolio, 2 public company board seats, 2 private company board seats, a lot of mentoring through, mostly through Harvard now, used to be through Mass Challenge. And we should talk about where to find mentors, because those are 2 great places to look for them. And I also coach a lot of first-time CEOs in the startup space, mostly women, because as I'm fond of saying, we're the ones who will stop and ask for directions. So that's my life. And really thrilled to be part of the All Raise community, along with Holly and Danielle on the Boston chapter leadership team, and Lily, and Sarah, and Kate, and all the other great people.
Amazing. Okay, so as everyone can tell, we have a heavy hitter lineup here that is going to provide some amazing advice. And I guess I failed to even just say two words. So I'm Holly Maloney. I'm managing director at General Catalyst. We are a full stack venture capital firm. So have the privilege of working with many amazing founders, as a board member, and spend so much time with our companies and figuring out how to construct the ideal, advisory and board makeup of companies. So I'm excited to be jotting down notes as well here, as I also moderate the discussion. So let's just jump into it. Maybe kicking things off with Emily. So, as you think about mentor, advisor, and board member, they're obviously 3 different roles, have different, equally important, but just sort of different aspects of them. What are the key criteria that you consider, that you think best define these 3 different roles?
Well, I consulted my big book of official advice on this, and there aren't a lot of hard and fast rules, but I will tell you from my experience, mentors, the adjectives I think of with mentoring, it's the least well-defined. It's, informal, occasional, sometimes short engagements around specific issues, point problems and issues over a short period of time or a short episode in the company's maturation. Advisors I think of as a little bit more structured relationship, usually with some sort of written understanding in place about what the advisor will do and how much time they'll invest in supporting the company, and probably a little bit more broad of a remit, probably gets a little bit more involved in the company, gets more familiar with the company, and over a longer arc of time is providing a little bit more consistent guidance through multiple stages, potentially. And then in a board role is the one that's most well-defined. In part, we have the SEC to thank for that, because for public companies, we have organizations that specify exactly what board members have to do, at least at a minimum. So, but beyond that, we also have a general understanding of board members having a much longer involvement and a much broader involvement, and slightly differentiated because board members aren't just team CEO. They have to represent the interests of shareholders. So they take an interesting step into a fiduciary responsibility. So that changes the nature of the relationship a bit. So I guess simply stated, informal and occasional through somewhat longer, somewhat more structured to much more structured and actually regulated to some degree.
And I'm just going to tag on a quick follow-up question. As you think about the portfolio of your life, how do you think about, what might be the right number of advisory roles versus mentor roles versus board roles? What is,
how long is a piece of string? I think it's hard to answer because it depends on how busy you want to be and how engaged you get. I mean, some of the companies I've worked with who have called me a mentor, I think of what I did for them, and it was a couple of 1-hour phone calls. And I think, well, if that scratches your itch, I'm happy for you to think I was a mentor. It wasn't a really big deal. And I have other people that are going to wear me out because they are so happy to call me. And so it depends a little bit on what people's use of my time is. I have to prioritize my public company board work first because I get paid for that and I have legal responsibilities. So I have to make sure that I have bandwidth for that. And then I put the private company board work second. And then what I have left over after I walk the dog is, what I can do in mentoring and advising.
Great. And turning it over to Kirk, I think there often is a lot of mystery around how one becomes an advisor, a mentor, a board member. Often get a lot of questioning as to, I think this might be something for me. I think I have something to add, value to companies as they're growing. I don't know how to position myself to even be a candidate for such a position. So maybe if you could just comment on, how did you find yourself in a position where you were sought after for these roles? The sequencing might have been slightly different. Was it first a mentor and then a board member, or how did you kind of eventually build out that portfolio?
Hi, it's a good question. And I'm going to kind of riff a little bit on the last question when you think about it. I actually think that as a CEO, I became a better CEO after I was a board member. So I encourage you, if you are a sitting CEO, to think about when you think you've got things kind of going. And I was like Emily, a 3-time CEO. And by the third stint, hopefully you have some sense of what is happening and going on. And so at some point I said to my investors, I'd like to pursue a board spot. And I think it made me a better CEO. I actually regret not starting sooner, because you're sitting in the seat of your board who has some fiduciary responsibility, over the company. And I think I would have been much better at communicating and engaging and leveraging that board more fully as both their, for their experience, but also for their mentorship. So I think it's an important thing for all of you to be thinking about. To the question, and thank you for saying sought after. I don't know that I'd go so far, but I'm very flattered. I think the truth is that some of this is just sheer luck and timing. If we take board work, and that is different than advisor and mentor, but let's start with board work, because that's something many of you probably have some interest in, and for all kinds of really good reasons. As I said, I think it develops you as an executive. It can be highly lucrative. We'll talk about that later, I think. But the reality is that some of it's just timing and luck. I mean, I think I had the opportunity to be on a board fairly early in my career, in my mid-40s, but it wasn't a public board. It was a advisory board to a family-run business. I took it. I think for the first 2 years, I was a terrible board member. I didn't understand the serious commitment that it was. I didn't understand that I should show up for meetings. I was actually, I had a huge job. I was traveling globally. And I was chasing hard to keep up with my day job. So I learned a lot through that journey, and the CEO is actually probably more of a mentor to me than I was to him, but I learned how to take the board experience responsibly. And that did lead to opportunities for me once I could say I've got board experience. And yet timing and luck was very much a factor. The truth is, if you are a woman in tech, with a CEO, CFO, or marketing, chief product officer, you are well positioned to be a target for folks looking to fill their boards up. And that is happening. And as we can talk about someday, maybe over cocktails, it wasn't happening necessarily 10 years ago. It is real, it is happening, and you are in a highly desirable seat with those credentials. And I've been the beneficiary, candidly, of that. My timing was good. I had CEO credentials. So the trick for me was to take a spot, which I did, my first, true public board, and try to be pretty good at. So I think because it is a small community, I'll give you an example. The first board I was on we ended up selling the company. We tried to pivot. It was a bit of a struggle, a great team. We were just in market headwinds, and we had to do some complicated things. I got to know more than I expected, to get to know some of the, not only the investment bankers who were associated with the board, but also the search consultants who were associated with the board, and the lawyers who were associated with the board, who supported the board. And those folks, and we got through it, and it was a good outcome, but those folks are recommending to other boards they work with, hey, if you're looking for this person who knows these things, you should add this person to your list. So once you enter, and that was a little bit of luck, I will be honest, that network is still pretty tight. When you can say to a search consultant who calls you, have you ever been on a public board? And if the answer is yes, check, you suddenly rise to the top of the list with your credentials. So it's kind of that first spot. And I do think making the world know that you're ready and being in a position where you're credible to be a public board member is part of it. In terms of the advisory and the mentorship piece of this puzzle, which I think is a gratuitous cycle, I will tell you that you really, if you want to develop your coaching genes with an aspiration to be a board member, this is the best place to start. Obviously, as leaders, we're always coaching, but to be sort of in a different relationship where you aren't invested in the outcome, right, is to practice the work of being a board member. And I have to tell you, that's a matter of putting yourself out there. For instance, when I speak, I always, and Lily will tell you this because sometimes, look, if I can help, link in with me to the point where my executive administrative assistant is going to kill me one day. But if you put yourself out there and say, let me know, link in with me if I can help you, then people will find you. They really will. But putting yourself out there and engaging in that community, the trick is to have the time and the cycles to do that. But I do think getting some experience as an advisor or a mentor outside of your management responsibility, which is a very different thing, is kind of critical to sort of getting your muscles ready to be a private and then eventually public board member. I hope that's helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. A lot of really good insight and advice there for folks that are seeking out these kinds of roles in the short term. And so turning it over to Danielle, as our sitting entrepreneur, how do you think about, when the timing might be right to seek out a mentor or an advisor or a board member, and how do you interview for those roles and know that you might have found the right person for whatever it is you're looking to fulfill?
So for me, it kind of everything almost just fell in my lap. So this might be, an easier said than done type of situation. I right when I launched my Spark FM, the radio station, I also applied for E4All, a business accelerator. And in that business accelerator, we were given I don't want to say platter, but we were given quite a few mentors to choose from. So each person in the cohort, there was 15, we got 3 mentors. So there was that many mentors to kind of match through. And we did kind of like a speed dating for mentors almost. We all had 3 minutes to go through them. For me, I knew I needed help because I knew everything about radio and media, but business aspect of things, I was completely like brand new. There was a lot of things that I just had no idea what to do. So when we were matched with these mentors, doing your due diligence too, it was not only you want to trust your gut, but you also want to find people that are genuinely interested in what you are doing. And even if they don't know too much about it, they are inquisitive. They come with really great energy because they want to know. They are looking for ways to figure things out by themselves. They're doing their own research, and it goes both ways. Mentors and CEOs really have to want to work with each other. And speed dating was really cool because there were some people that I was like automatically like, new. And then there was other people where like, oh my God, I want them. And doing research prior to them, like Kirk was saying, like I went onto their LinkedIns. They gave us a list of them. I pretty much stalked them a little bit to see what they had going on.
You did. I believe you.
To see if any of the parts that I was really having trouble points or pain points with in the business were what they specialized in. And if that was the thing, then I was really interested in speaking to them. And I asked them specific questions about the things that I needed help with. And if they were able to help me with those, and if we had organic, really great conversation, then I knew that that was, you know, somebody that I would potentially want to meet up with. Even the mentors that I didn't get matched with, if I did have a really strong feeling with them and they really were somebody that I was interested in, I would still follow up with them, and, you know, touch base with them. And another really great way is from word of mouth. I have been offered or introduced to some really great people who have come into my life and really helped to shape what I wanted the business to be and where I wanted it to go, from people knowing about me, knowing what I had going on and saying, oh, I work with somebody who does this and this, you should speak to them. And I would recommend speaking to every single person that, you know, that you are interested in, asking really real questions about how they can help you and what they can, or what advice they can give you.
Can I just say, Danielle saying she almost stalked people, that is a critical success factor. No, it is. It really is. I mean, I think if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to chew through glass. That's what someone said to me once. And I think chewing through glass includes being confident enough to just, and determined enough to go out and say to people, I need some help. Help me. Can you help me? Right?
I think you said something really, it's a key factor to success, because if you want your venture or your business, your company to go somewhere, we all have very good knowledge about what our market is and all that great stuff. But there are some things that no matter where you come from, you're like, I have a really pressing question that I need help with. I wonder if Emily can help me with this. And then you would just really go out and ask her, you know, can you help me with this? You either get, oh, no, I don't. I know somebody who can. Or, hey, yes, I recently figured out something about this. Let me see what I can do. So it's starting a really great relationship with even people that might not end up your mentors, but might be able to introduce you to great people.
And I would just amplify, Danielle, I love your point. I think you can have a game-changing mentorship experience and only meet with that person twice. I mean, I look back on the moments that mattered the most to me and the people that gave me insights. I still carry them with me and I go back to them. And I didn't meet with them for coffee for 10 years. I reached out and they helped me and they told me the truth. And it was hard to hear in some cases, really hard to hear in some cases, I'll just say. But I carried it with me and I go back to it and I use it. So I think when you start thinking about going for mentorship, you don't have to be thinking, do I have time to meet with this person all the time? And what if I don't like them? I think, Danielle, I love your point. I need help on something. Help me. And then you can decide if you want a lifelong, you know, relationship, but you can get so much value in that encounter. It's a great point.
100%. 100%. And turning things over to Carol, and this is actually related to a question that popped up in the chat as well. What advice would you have for CEOs to ensure that they get the most out of their advisors and board members? You know, one question that popped up in the chat was, you know, what makes an advisory role feel rewarding? How can I, as a founder, make sure the relationship is mutually beneficial? So somewhat related to that question.
Yeah, those are great questions. And I think just building a little bit on what Kirk was saying about mentors, and because I won't spend as much time on that, you probably have tons of mentors in your life and you don't call them mentors. And I think that's probably the best kind of mentor you have, who you might reach out to even once every couple of years, because they just really can help you with a specific thing. So you should have as many mentors in your life as you can, and you don't have to be ever afraid to reach out to someone and ask for help, even if you haven't spoken to them in a long time. That's something I hear from a lot of people. They're like, well, I haven't stayed in touch. You know what? Reach out. Most people will be thrilled. They will be thrilled. So mentors, I'll put aside for a second. But I think for both board members and advisors, the number one step is to be clear about why are you bringing on advisors, or why are you bringing on an independent board member? What is it that you think they can help you with? Because if you lack that clear vision, that's the number one fail point, I think, for these kinds of relationships. And then the second fail point is when you lack on an agreement between what that is, between you and your advisor or your board members. You're not really clear about what it is you're looking for from that person. And also, to Kirk's point, board members and advisors are obviously a little different. As you're bringing on an independent board member, you may have some very specific reasons you're doing that. Could be that your board has told you they want you to do that. So be clear that you want to do it and you understand why, but they have somewhat of a governance and a fiduciary role. So there's things that are a little bit separate there. But in general, getting really clear about what success looks like and what the value of an advisor or a board member is going to be is the most important thing. So just, a couple of examples, like if your number one goal for an advisors, and I've seen this, is that you want them to make introductions for you. You want them to introduce you to potential customers or partners or investors. Be really upfront and clear about that so they know that's what you're looking for from them, because I've definitely seen some of these go sideways where that's not what the advisor was expecting at all. And some advisors don't want to open up their contact database or may not be comfortable with that kind of thing. So be really clear about that stuff. If you want your advisors to add to your current leadership team in a way, and I don't mean become a leader, but fill in some gaps where maybe you're not so sure you have a really strong product leader, or you need some specific capabilities around AI or go to market, then get clear about what that is going to look like. What level of engagement are you looking for? What kinds of things are you expecting them to help you with? And what skills and experiences do they need to have in order to be able to give you the benefit that you are looking for? Common things. Have they gone through the same kind of growth trajectory you're going through? Have they been from 5 million to 50 million? If they've never done 5 million, I'm sure they could still be really valuable to you, but understand that there are things you're going through that they may not really be able to wrap their heads around and understand. So once you're really clear about that and you communicate that, I think the next step is to make a plan for how you're going to utilize your advisors. This is another area where I think a lot of these arrangements fall down, which is some people say, hey, well, yeah, I want you to help me with this, but they don't have a clear way about how they're going to engage to extract that value. Is it a day a month? Is it going to be just with the CEO? Are you expecting them to engage with your executive staff at some point? What's that very clear level of commitment that you want? And then talk about how you're going to structure it to get value. So I think there was a question in there about structure. My experience has been some level of structure, especially for advisor roles. Board members come with a structure, right? There's at least a quarterly meeting. Is make a structure for the advisor. When I was an advisor to WordStream, they had quarterly meetings, sort of like a shadow board meeting. It was all around go-to-market. The sales and marketing team came with a problem or an opportunity, and they talked with that, with their advisor board, and we helped them with those things. And they also asked us about what was going on in our lives. So that was pretty structured. There were other parts of it too, but that really helped to make sure we were able to give them value when we understood what was going on. Another possibility is I work with a company called Sendoso. The CEO sends out a monthly update letter, really short, kind of what's going on, but he includes 3 to 4 ways his advisors can help him that month. In fact, at one point he built it into a game, like the wheel of help. So when you spun the wheel, it landed on something that you could help him with. Hey, can you help me find a chief product officer? Hey, can you do some social shares? Hey, would you come talk to my women's network at the company? Just a bunch of different stuff. And it's fun, it's engaging. And I think it really helps make sure that he's getting some value from everything. And then the last recommendation I would make is, your advisors want you to be successful, and your board members obviously want you to be successful. So make it easy for them to help market you. So when you have big news or something going on in the company, or a major marketing campaign, even that you want to get some legs to, create sample social shares for them. Give them a quick note about it. It doesn't have to be a long letter, but give them a quick note, ask them to help share it on social for you. They would love to do it, and it makes sure that it gets in front of them. And oh, by the way, you're also helping keep them engaged with what you're doing. So, my my key takeaway is get clear. And if you can't find the time to utilize your advisors, it's probably not worth getting into the relationship, because a lot of these relationships mean you're usually giving the advisor maybe some shares in your company, right? And your advisor is going to be disappointed if you don't utilize them, and you're going to have wasted shares if you don't utilize them. And to Nikki's question about how do you make it worthwhile for your advisors, it's those things. If they feel like they're adding value, they're going to be a happy advisor, because that's really why we do it. We want to help your company. We want to help you personally succeed. And so if you're not tapping into us, we actually, don't like the relationship either. We want to make it possible that we can look back and say, I think I added some value, because that's what's important.
I would like to add to that too. What we were advised to do and what I take into every situation now, I was recently asked to be on an advisory board. So it was really kind of cool. And I liked how Emily pointed out that, like to become a really great CEO, I think it was Kirk too, like it's really good to sit on a board or an advisory board or something to kind of get you a little bit more well-rounded with what you have going on. Before every mentor meeting, whether it's something impromptu, I kind of have a list of the things that I want to talk to them about. Because at the end of the day, as a CEO and also as a mentor, everybody's really busy. So you really want to get into that meeting, you want to get things done, and you want to get out of that meeting. And I would even suggest that, like when you don't have anything to really talk about and it's gone a couple of months, every now and then just, like Carol was saying, like send them a little bit of, hey, this is what's going on, a quick update of where we are. You never know if they, you're just putting yourself right back on their radar. So I do that ever so often. Just send a quick text like, hey, just checking in. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Something random will touch a base soon. And then a lot of mentors or advisors, I usually put on figure out how often I want to meet with them. That's always a question that I'm always asked, like, so when do you want to meet next? Do you want to set up something every 2 weeks, once a month? And it's good to kind of know when you want to do that, know your capacity, know your bandwidth, because some weeks you might have like really pressing questions, and other times you might not have anything to say for a while. So really kind of make it worthwhile and put together an agenda, a little bullet pointed list of just some things that you want to get through. And it's always not about give and take, and what they can do for you and what you can do for them. Like establish an actual genuine relationship with people in general. People like people and people help people, not so much businesses, but they really kind of tend to go towards who they, who's almost like a friend to them. It's like my little mentor friend.
I totally agree. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, even on public boards, the best CEOs I work with reach out to every board member before the board meeting to say, what's on your mind? And by the way, here's an issue you're going to see, and let's talk through. Like, so they kind of preview, and you have a little more of an arm's length relationship with management and with the CEO occasionally. It really depends on the circumstance than you do in a private company. But the best of the best, take Danielle's advice a step further and actually sort of, and it's a time consuming thing, to your point, right? They actually sort of, here's the update, here's the that. They also leverage their management team to do some of that work, right? On one of my public boards, I'm a mentor of the senior most woman in the company. And we actually work together. And I know he also uses her as a way to sort of say, hey, let me fill you out on this. We're going to go through this in the next meeting. And how are you doing? And here's how management thinks. So not only him, and that's a masterful stroke. And he has other members of the team that work with other board members in this mentee relationship. And all of it comes together as a communication vehicle and a relationship. So those meetings, even when they're rough, and they are sometimes rough, are greased, as Danielle said, with human relationships, because that is still kind of what's going on in the boardroom.
Yeah. And just one thing on the board, the board calls, the pre-board calls, I think are great. Make sure you get your board materials out ahead of the meeting. You don't want to spend time going through all this detail. Like, expect your board to do that. And then you can have real conversations in the boardroom.
+1 to that. It is so
Yeah.
so helpful. You don't want to walk through, PowerPoint slide after slide on metrics and financials. It should all be around strategic conversation. So that's a really good piece of advice. And Emily, I mean, the next topic really, it's a good segue. I mean, and I think, some really good insights were already shared on this, but it'd be great to get your take on, how do you measure if you're doing a quote good job, when, or, as a board member, as a mentor, and, conversely, I mean, how do you know if the relationship may not be working, and when it may be time to move on?
Well, I've had both of those. I see Pranima is asking, how do you say goodbye to a mentor that didn't work out? So let's come back to that topic as well as part of this. Well, I'm an achievement puppy, as many of us are. We like to accomplish stuff, and what works for me is knowing that I did something that was useful, that I had nothing makes my day better than when someone sincerely says to me, "You remember last week when we talked about this? That was a great piece of advice. This is what I did, and it worked out." That is the absolute best thing that happens in my day now, because I don't get to boss anybody else around anymore, as I'm not a CEO anymore. So it's so great to find out that my advice was useful. And that's almost the only reward that I want. And so in terms of measuring value, I want to know that that's happening. Not everything that comes out of my mouth is brilliant. There's a lot of shit in between the good ideas. And so I don't expect everybody to sop up every word I say and assume it's all great. And if they start telling me it's all great, then I don't believe them. But I do want to know that, some of the things I said were useful. I used to, when I was in graduate school, I taught a class, and I discovered that, I was having an impact if somebody actually opened a notebook and decided to write something down that I said. And so I still have the same rule of thumb. I'm talking, are they writing any of this down? If they're not writing it down, it's probably not useful to them. I guess the other thing that I look for is whether they're confiding in me, because Nicole was asking a question in the chat about bad news. If they're willing to trust me to say, I'm really afraid, I think I screwed up, is this bad? What should I do? If they're willing to go there with me, then I feel like I've earned their trust. And so that feels like the relationship has some foundation for success. So do they write things down? Do they ever tell me that anything I said was worthwhile? Do they get back to me to say, oh, I wanted to let you know it worked, it didn't work, or it was a disaster? I'm fine with that too. On the no question, how do you know when it's not working? Well, they're not writing anything down. And then the other thing related to that is you're getting what I call the circular nod. You're talking and they're just going, circular nod. They only want to pump sunshine at you. They only want to tell you all the great stuff. And I think you're really just looking at me to be an amplifier for your business. I could do that, but that's not what an advisor or a mentor is meant to do. I'm supposed to help you with something. So if you're not willing to share anything that you haven't already buffed to a high gloss to make it look beautiful, then that's not really a functional relationship. If they ask me questions I can't answer, then it's not working, because there are a lot of things I'm no good at. And I have to say to people, that's not my wheelhouse at all. And then sometimes overloaded expectations. I just had an experience recently where someone asked for some advice, and it got a little bit overwhelming for me. It started to become too much because we hadn't established any kind of formal relationship, and it was sort of repetitive and over. And I thought, I can't meet this person's expectations, which leads us to Pranima's question. Is it Pranima? Am I saying that right? I don't see you on the screen. You're in a different screen probably.
Yes, you are.
Okay, Pranima. How do you say goodbye to a mentor that didn't work out? Let me first answer the other question is, as a mentor or an advisor, I have had to go to a CEO and say, I don't think I'm what you need right now. And I'm sure you're probably feeling the same thing, but you're probably too nice to say so. And I have a lot of other demands on my time, and you should be spending time with someone that can really do what you need. And so I'm going to excuse myself. And if I can help you find someone that's a better fit, I'd be delighted to do that. So that's it's a, you know, the breakup question. It's not you, it's me, you know, that's the way out of that one. I think, you know, to get rid of a mentor that's not working out, you can do the same thing. You can say, look, what I need from a mentor, I think, is a set of skills that you've acknowledged that's not in your wheelhouse, or I need more time and I know you're really pressed for time, or I need someone that can really work on getting my pitch deck ready for the President's Challenge and I know you're out for the next month. And you can just say, you know, you've been so helpful, it's been so valuable, and I can't wait to tell people about this very wonderful relationship we've had, and I want to free you so that your time can be useful to somebody else. So just a nice kiss off.
That was actually a pain point for me. Of the three more mentors that I got matched with, I only really stuck with one. And the other two, one man, I don't think he really cared either way. So it wasn't that hard to break up with him. But there was another one, there was another woman that I did like, but it just wasn't working out. We didn't really vibe well. There was a lot of times in meetings where I ended up feeling really, really frustrated, annoyed, and just kind of down after the meeting. So when it kind of happened in a really great way around the holidays when things started to get crazy for people, we kind of just drifted apart. So I'm a person who I don't like to hurt anybody's feelings because, you know, I don't know if she really liked me and she wanted me to stay. But for me, it just wasn't working. And the holidays causing a rift was actually a really great way to break up. Every now and then I'll send an email to all of them and just be like, hey, I was featured on this or that, or hey, check this out. Or they'll see a news clipping of me doing an interview or something. And they'll either email me, and it's a great little exchange, but then it stops right there, just to kind of not burn the bridge and to continue the relationship, but just not, some people are just not supposed to be your mentors or you're on your advisory. They're there to just cheer you on along the way, but not supposed to have a role in what you're actually doing.
Good way to put it.
That's awesome. And maybe switching things to get a little bit more tactical, and I know this question has come up in the chat as well, so it's on folks' mind. How and Kirk, if you could guide some of this knowledge, how do compensation structures work for these roles, and you know, how long do they typically last? I know that was covered in some of the prior dialogue, but I know folks are wondering, you know, what is the average range for equity for an advisor, and obviously these things change whether it's, you know, an advisor or an official board member.
Yeah, and Holly, I love this question. I'm really happy that we're talking about it because it's sort of this sort of very, particularly in the public board, you know, this big secret. And so let me start at that level because I often say when I talk about compensation, there's no wonder men didn't want women on boards because this is one of the most lucrative dollar per hour things you're ever going to do, right? So they've been trying to hold those seats for a reason. It is, compensation could be really, really attractive in these. I think, and like anything, you get what you put in. So most public boards, and I'm going to rough it out, but I'll give you some numbers, are 50%-ish equity, 50% cash. It's paid on an annual basis. And they typically also give an upfront grant. So you get, when you join, you kind of get a grant. They, like any other kind of stock grant, they're typically RSUs, but sometimes they're options, publicly traded shares, and they vest. So the equity piece of it vests over a 3 to 4 year period. And that can range anywhere from very small companies we'll talk about the individual pieces, 100, 150K a year of stock grants, all the way up to, you know, 200, 250,000 of stock grants. And I think higher, very, very large companies. If you're on a financial services board and you have to do a lot of regulatory work, those can be upward of 300,000 or 400,000 just in the grant side. Now, you also get paid if you're sometimes on a committee. You get additional compensation, both cash and stock, or one or the other, depends on the board. And if you chair a committee, which I do, I chair the risk committee at Thomson Reuters, that you get another tranche. So it's incredibly lucrative. Now, on the equity side, and by the way, you typically get another 150 or 200,000 in cash, depending, right? In some of my boards, you can ask for it all in shares, which is, I think, a better way to think about it. But typically it's sort of a third cash, 2/3 stockish kind of a structure. Now, the thing to note about this, though, is most companies today who are well managed, I think, and thinking about shareholders, ask board members to carry, if you will, a minimum holding of stock. And that typically is, represents 5x, 3 to 5 times, depending on the company. 4 to 5 times, I think, is not uncommon, of your annual compensation. So you don't trade that stock. You don't get it and then trade it. You hold on to it and accumulate until you hit that holding expectation. So it's not a highly liquid compensation, but if you believe in the company and you love the company, it's very lucrative. Now, what goes with that is also a commitment that you're going to stay a while, unless you don't. Usually there's a reason people leave. I think that, and feel free to jump in if you have a perspective here, but I think 5 years is kind of a minimum expectation, although you are voted on by the shareholders every year on a public board today. Now, that's not 100% true, but that's also best practice for a public board. And so for some reason, you might not get elected. I've never seen it happen, but mostly the expectation is you stay for 5. I'm with board members who've been on the board 10 years. And there's a lot of conversation now in good board governance about forcing some turnover, either 10-year maximum, because you do tend to get comfortable, or other companies think about a retirement age. I think that's very healthy. And I also think that one of the keys to getting more diversity in boards is to get the long tenured board members to sort of know when it's time to go, right? Because I think as long as they sit there, they don't open up a seat for somebody on this call. So hopefully that's clear. The board tenure is lengthy. And the expectation is committed. Your compensation, you're probably going to hold for a long time during that period, but it's extremely lucrative. On the other side, the private company side, and I think Emily touched on this, I really think it depends. Most private companies have full compensation in shares, and it's typically a percentage of the company. I think you go from advisory board kind of on a continuum to the private company board. And as Holly referenced, that it changes and it depends on if it's a bigger company, if it's a growth company versus early stage. I think somewhere between, I don't know, a quarter of a point and 3/4 of a point is kind of what the market is bearing, depending on where the company is. And I will say it's much, I joined a pre-IPO company that was setting up a board to get ready to go public. We ended up getting bought in the process, but that's probably a little bit less because the expectation it's going to pop, and it in fact did. So it really depends on where the company is, but it's typically options, and it's typically somewhere in that kind of range. In terms of the advisory and mentorship work, I would just say, I think the expectation for a mentor, as I mentor, is that I'm not getting paid. Now, some people do this for a living, and that to me is more of a coach. So you can find great coaches, and in many ways they are mentors on steroids, and they're incredibly helpful. And you may, as an advisor or board member, suggest to someone on the management team that you're working with that, hey, what you really need is someone who can invest time and energy and is skilled and trained in this area. So in that case, that's typically a cash compensation that you might offer to a professional. But an informal mentorship role, to me, I don't get paid for any of the work I do, mentoring and advising in that way, other than the joy and gratitude I get. And I paid it forward. So I was the beneficiary of enormous support in my career. So I view this as something that I'm doing to keep the universe in balance. Does that help? Was that clear at all? Do we have any questions on that? Because it's pretty tactical stuff, but it is that public board business. I highly recommend when you get to, like Emily and I, when you get to portfolio time, it's it's you got to love the work. And I will also say, getting the second and third board seat is all about being a good board member. So doing the work, engaging the team, just being a good board member, I think is how you make that sustainable and worthwhile.
That was incredibly helpful. I'm sure we'll see if there are any follow-up questions to that come into the chat. One did just pop up on, how do you get onto your first public board seat? Given, I think it's now a path we're all trying to figure out, okay, how do
I get into this? I want a piece of that. Look, I want a piece of that action. Okay.
Yeah. You really say $300,000? Crap. What am I doing?
We could do a whole session on how to get your first public. I mean, that could be a whole
Carol,
session.
right? I will say there's organizations now, even in Boston's doing some really good stuff. I know the Mass Technology Leadership Council has a one-day program to get sort of, they call it Board Ready Boot Camp, and it's putting and some of it's about getting the skills and hearing from people, what's an audit committee, how do I spell, whatever. And it's also some really good ideas about this, but that list of attendees is then made available to companies as they start to look. A similar thing is happening with, there's a couple of women, WCD, Women Corporate Directors is a great organization that is national. We have a great crew here in the Massachusetts area, and that's all, they're also collecting lists of potential board members. The one thing I would say is, when you work with, I don't know, pick your highly influential person that you get a chance to get exposed to. If you are on a company that Holly Maloney, for instance, is investing in, or if you have the opportunity to work with a company advisor in your company, that put it out there in the universe. I mean, one of the things that I think is important is to say, look, I'm working hard, and I've been on these private board, an opportunity over cocktails. I've been in this private board. I've done this and I've done that. I'm really interested in my first chance, or a chance to get into the public board scene. Any suggestions? And you just put it out there. There are search companies, and almost every public board now, for fiduciary reasons, is using search. So if they have an open seat, they are often going to, you name the big search firms. And that's another thing. If you're a CMO or a head of product of a company that, or a head of HR, is a very, very hot area where boards are trying to fill out their ability to engage employees. So that expertise is particularly now navigating the next 3 years as we transition back to work someday physically. So I think those are skills. Then reach out to the board practice. You can find them online, of Heidrich, of these other places, and just say, hey, look, I'm really interested, and I think I've got credentials, and this is my story. And you get put in that, and you just kind of put your intention out in the universe, do some training. If you see it come by your desk, those are good ideas. What else? What do you think, Carol, Emily, any other thoughts there?
Yeah, I would say definitely on the networking. Well, one, you got to make sure you do have skills that are relevant to a public company board. And you might, especially if you're in digital transformation, even if you've never been on a public company board. But so think about that, and then take every, to Kirk's point, like take those recruiter calls, even if they're calling you for a CMO or a CHRO, and let them know you're not interested in that, but you're interested in boards. And you'd be surprised how often, if they don't recruit for boards, they have someone else that their team does, and they'll make that connection for you. So take those calls and get back to them and try to help them fill that CMO role, and they may find a board seat for you.
I will say that earlier in my career, long before I had the opportunity or was ready for a board opportunity, I did think that the way to get ahead was to put my head down and do the work, and other people would notice. And sometimes that worked, and other times I look around, why is anybody not noticing all this great stuff I'm doing? And I have learned almost too late in life that you actually have to be ready to tell people about what you're doing. And you have to, in relating to finding a board role, you have to tell people that's what you want to do. You have to get found, but you have to let people find you by letting them know. And if you know people who serve on boards, you have to say to them, I want to do that. Do you think I'm ready? You know, what assets do you think I have? And you have to get your short list ready. You have to be able to say, I think I could serve on a board that needs X, Y, and Z. Those are the 3 things I have. And I would have a lot to learn, but I'm a quick study and I would learn all the rest of it.
Awesome.
So that's what I have to say on that.
All right. So I know we just have a few minutes left here. Maybe if we just end with one last question, you know, for Carol and Emily here. You know, when and why does an advisor convert into a board member, and, you know, change the transition like that? If there's something you can just comment on, you know, quickly there, both as the person who's, you know, from advisor to the board member, and then for the CEO, like, oh, gee, this person should officially be on board.
It's a great pathway. I mean, it's a great pathway for someone who wants to eventually get to a board position. Actually, just last year went from being an advisor to a company to being a board member for that same company. So it's a very natural progression. I don't think nobody's entitled to it, but it is an opportunity. It is a path that you can make happen. I think it's after you demonstrate more value than just being able to solve a couple of point problems, and then you demonstrate some ongoing familiarity. And in my case, I happened to invest in the company at the same time. That happened to make them understand that I was really committed to their success. What else was I going to say? I mean, the big change that I think that CEO in particular had to get used to is once I went from being an advisor to him to a board member for the company, I think he didn't like me as much anymore because I'm not always on his side, right? And I have to be on the side of the investors sometimes. Sometimes I am on his side, and that's been a little bit of a change, and it was awkward. We got to talk about it, and this feels a little uncomfortable, but it is a transformation in your relationship. But if you've built a good, positive relationship, that's one that hopefully you can weather that change when you make that move.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just say I think it's interesting that did happen. I haven't seen it happen that much. I think sometimes it's at smaller companies where they don't have a very big board yet. And so they say, let's be an advisor and then become an independent after that. But I think the experience of being an advisor is, again, another one of those great steps, because you'll build your reputation, you build your network, and that will probably help you transfer to a board seat versus an advisory role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Fantastic. So I think now is time where we can extend into sort of informal networking. If folks want to stay on, you know, we can set up you know, some breakout rooms if folks are looking to meet other people, make deeper connections, have follow-up discussion. But I just want to thank all of our amazing panelists here for the insights shared on what I think are topics that are super top of mind for folks, both on the entrepreneur side and on people who are aspiring to be advisors and board members. So thank you so much for the time, and thank you to everyone for the participation in the chat. I know that a lot of questions came up and they were actually, you know, answered directly in chat. So it's amazing to see that activity on the side. So thank you all so much for joining us. And again, feel free to stick around and we can just take it from here. So thank you, everybody.
Can I just say to Holly, to Kirk, to Carol, and to Danielle, I love all of you, and I've learned a lot from all of you. You're all very special, so thank you.
Yeah. No,
thank you, back at you.
yeah.
A lot today.
Thank you.
Emily, in my next life, I want to be as good at executing and leading.
I want to be as on time for meetings and as passionate and articulate.
Oh, we all do. I can attest to that. I know. I mean, Kirk just shows me up meeting after meeting.
That's
Like,
a psycho.
sorry, I'm 1 minute late, Kirk. You know.
Oh, all right. So how are we going to do this? We're going to see who wants to stick and divide into groups.
Yeah, let's see who sticks around and wants to engage in the breakout rooms. And then once we kind of see our group here, I have breakout rooms created already with each speaker and panelist within the 5 rooms.
Well, of course you do, because you're super organized.
Why
Awesome.
would bring me up? Just make stuff happen.
Very nice. Oh, I see some people I didn't see before. I see Amita Soni. Hi, she knows a lot about board work.
Yes, she
but
does.
You can ask
Fun.
her.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, there's some.
Hi, Amita.
Hi, Amita. How are
Good.
you? It's nice to see you.
Ah,
Are we ready
Great
for
session.
breakout rooms?
Oh, let's try it.
You should see everything.
Okay, I'm going to room 4.
All right.
All right, off I go.
Hi. Oh, there you go. Oh, I tried. Hi, Sharon. Were you able to join a room?
I have to actually leave because I'm going to have to go onto another Zoom.
Oh,
This
no
has been
worries.
amazing. Thank you so much. Such great information.
Of course.
So
I'm
I
glad-
look forward to the next one.
Wonderful. I'll see you
Thank
soon.
you.
Sharon. Bye, Sharon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Hi, Jamil. Were you able to join a breakout room or do you have to hop off? Jamil, can you hear me all right? Okay.
Sorry, didn't realize I was still on mute. I am trying to transition from my phone onto my laptop, so I'm actually in breakout room 2. So I don't know if it's possible to put me in there and then I'll click off on my cell phone.
Oh, yeah. So you're in room 2, you mentioned?
Yep.
Okay, let me put you back in there. Hopefully this will work.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm pausing the recording because I don't know if this means that we're recording a breakout room. So pausing it because I just Googled it and I don't think it does. So I'll pause and I'll bring it back once folks come back. Hi, everyone. How are the breakout rooms?
I clicked the leave the room so suddenly.
I know some folks, they soak up all the extra seconds they can get and then some jump right back in.
You know, it wasn't intentional. I wanted to clear it and then I just left mid-section. Oh, the break room, sorry to take over. The break room was fantastic. Thank you.
Good. I'm so glad. I know a lot of value can come from those more intimate discussions. Good. Well, I just wanted to bring everyone back here to give folks the space to say goodbye. I know we have a few more groups trickling in, but just thought we'd wrap with a big thank you. And also for the speakers and panelists, but also for all of you for making the time out of your day to come and listen and learn and hopefully share with the world that you're ready to take on these opportunities.
Hi,
It
everyone.
was a great session. Thank you very much to the
Thank you.
organizers and to the panelists. I just thought it was really really great set of back and forth, and nice to have both board or advisor people as well as entrepreneurs. It's always a quite different perspectives and great to see. So thank you.
Nice to see you, Allison.
Yeah.
Nice to see you.
Awesome session.
Thank you. It was fantastic.
Thank you, everyone.
Great.
Thank you to all of our
Thank
panelists.
you,
Thank you
everyone.
this morning.
Thank you already.
Thank you, Mia.
Bye,
for all your
everyone.
help. Awesome
Yeah, thank you,
job.
Mia, very much.
Great job, Mia. Thanks, everybody.
Great job, Holly.
Thanks for having me.
Get that baby. Get that
I'm
baby.
gonna go.
going.
Yes, not mine. My daughter's. We're gonna. I think she's gonna beat Holly. I think.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know. We'll see. All right.
All
Bye.
right, take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Good to see you.
See you.